somebody came up with the name saying Jagdeep. So obviously my father didn't understand the Hindi aspect. So he said, "नहीं, Jagdeep, तो पूरे जग को रोशन करता है, दीप, जग का दीप." My father, okay, this sounds nice. I would like to be like that. कि जग को रोशन करो.
Welcome on this platform of International Indian Film Festival, Toronto, and I must thank Malik for giving us this opportunity for presenting this tribute to Jagdeep Saab on the opening day of this prestigious festival. So thank you for that, and it must have been a great loss for you. I still remember I spoke to you 8 years back, and the way you spoke about Jagdeep Saab was something else. What was your first reaction when you came to know about the news, sir?
I was there. I didn't come to know about it. I was right there. We were kind of thinking of maybe taking him to the hospital because he was feeling kind of slightly unconscious. And yeah, so when his last breath went off, I was there. And so it was strange. For the first time I saw somebody passing away in front of me. I've been to many people who I've known have passed away, but I've never seen anybody passing away in front of you. So that was a pretty emotional moment, and because everybody was there. My mom, my wife, my children, my dad's second wife, my stepsister, everybody was there. So yeah, so it was pretty it's something else, when you see somebody just leaving the breath, and the breath goes and that's it, finished, gone. So it was not traumatic from like he wasn't going through major whatever angst, but he just breathed, like he took 3 deep breaths, and I remember, and then he went, and he was on a wheelchair, and so he just passed away. So it was and then at that moment you don't know what to do, because it's like, okay, fine now. So I mean, I knew he had to go, but a lot of things come to you that I wish, kash, is your word, kash, ye, kash, wo. And so yeah, it was obviously an emotional
moment. Jagdeep Saab, the sort of life that he lived, and I'm sure that it was filled with a lot of struggle and strife. Where do you want to start from, sir?
So, like, growing up, obviously when you're young, you don't realize your father is some star or whatever. And we grew up in a very normal, he didn't bring his work home. So we stayed in this place called Bandra, which was the most amazing suburb of Bombay, then Bombay, today it's Mumbai. But it's the most amazing, it's like this little hamlet where a lot of Christians, Catholics, and actually it was a fantastic mix of people. And the economic divide was never so prominent at all. In fact, we went to a school which was a kind of a Christian Catholic school. And I mean, on the same bench, we had Samir, who was from the first skyscraper in Bombay, kind of, in the suburbs. And then on this right hand was Peter, who was living in a one small room, like a garage. So the garage was converted into a home, like on the outside the building, there's a garage so he was staying there with his 3 brothers and 4 sisters and parents. So yeah, so I went to Peter Fernandez. Peter was like this, and so the disparity the economic disparity was on this one bench. So you had the 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 poor, the middle class, the rich, all sitting together on this one bench, which today I don't. My kids didn't have that luxury of having this kind of disparity, sitting together and being best of friends, and so this whole thing about you having money, not having money, being a star, not a star, that didn't come in, because the whole thing was about equality, and you were in fact much more conscious. At some point you start realizing, oh, my father's famous. Oh, so we are supposedly rich. Oh, so I have to be much more conscious of that fact that in some ways I don't make it look like, oh, I have something which you don't. And so the whole flashing bit and everything was so subdued. And, so I think it was beautiful. Today we don't have that. There's too much of disparity in schools, and schools have become economically distributed. Like an economic strata will go to a certain school, and then it goes. So kids today miss out on the beauty of what we went to, and the friends we had, and diversity of friends, including religion, economic diversity, religious, ethnic diversity, everything. So when we grew up, that was the growing up. And at some point when I came to know my father's family, and when I was growing up, he was a comedian. Uh, I didn't know about the hero part or the child actor part. Later on, when I became 15, 16, 17, and we had access to some kind of VHS or stuff like that, where we could actually say, oh, my dad was a hero in this film, and he was a child actor in this film. So till then, it was always, oh, your dad is such a funny guy, and he's this funny man. And so that always carried forward. Like whenever my dad, we went out with him, and people were looking at him and laughing, and hey, it's like, so it's like wondering why they're laughing at my father. And it was just a pleasure that people relate when they see you, because my father was a funny guy, is to make them laugh. So in real life, whenever we went out to a movie or a restaurant, we always these smiles and laugh, and people would like come for autographs. And उस टाइम तो फोन नहीं था ना, अभी हर एक के हाथ में एक फोन है. Everybody come, I mean, like no questions asked, like straight away into your face, like it's like, so then it was like, can we have your autograph please, and stuff like that. So yeah, so like I said, so the growing up initially was the comedian Jagdeep, which we saw. And but like I said, yeah, the work was never brought home. So that was the growing up part of it. Then we realized, oh, after watching this film, oh man, he was a hero. And we saw Barkha and Bhabhi, and and Roop Rupaiya, and Saredi Lutera. And so, and I remember once there was a film he did called Anmol Moti, where Jitendra Saab was the lead, and Babita ji was the lead actress. And my father, it's like a flashback where he plays Babita ji's father. But at that point, when they show him, he's young, and he's a diver who gets pearls, the pearl divers. He's a pearl diver. And then there's an octopus, and there's a whole fight with the octopus, and my father gets killed. And then I started crying. I was like, oh, my father got killed. And I didn't realize I was young. So I was crying in the theater. So yeah, that is a pretty vivid memory. And yeah, so the rest of it, like I said, it was fun, and he was a good providing father. He gave us the best of whatever he could.
Right. So if we look at his before we look at his career, I believe you and Javed, you were overwhelmed by the sort of response that you guys receive from all across the world.
Yeah, I didn't expect this kind of love and appreciation for his work. But a lot of them, they knew the comedian Jagdeep. They had not seen the hero or the child actor. A generation which probably knew that, but they were probably a very few of them, because obviously if my dad was 12, 13, so obviously whoever has seen him, either they were 12, 13, or maybe, so they're very old now. but some who know films, who have seen film because of television channels show these old films, and some of the classics he's been in, like Aar Paar, Do Because Zameen, have been Hum Panchi Ek Dal Ke. These are three very classic films which are shown constantly on television channels. So a lot of love, respect, even the media. I mean, the way they gave the respect, and so I was moved. So and that's what he earned in these 70 years. I thought that this is what his main earning is. This is what the wealth he has collected, not what we call this house and car, but the love he collected, I think, was immense.
If we go back to the time when he came to Mumbai, I think he was 8 years of age with his mother, your grandmother.
Yes,
Was partition.
It was 47, 48. He was about 9 or 47, maybe just at the partition when all the trains were going up and down and these killings were happening, and so he came through that. And he was originally born in Madhya Pradesh in a place called Datia, which is next to Gwalior. And his father was a lawyer with the Maharaja of Datia. It was well-to-do family and very, very cultured family where he came from. Like they have Sayyid. So Sayyid is when you are from the Prophet's family. So they are descendants from the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And so they were very cultured, and in the way they behaved and what they believed in. But after my grandfather expired, then my dad was the youngest. So my dad was, and the difference between brothers was huge. So like the eldest brother and my father probably had a 25-year difference in age, So my grandmother was at 12 or 13 when she delivered the first child, and she had about 10, I think. Then that was in vogue. Everybody used to have a lot of children. So my grandmother went away to the two other brothers who were at that time in Karachi. And of course, it was India then. There was no division. And after maybe a year or something, this whole partition happened. And then my grandmother said, no, we got to go back. That's our home. That's our country. We choose to go there. And so the other brothers stayed there. My grandmother came back with two brothers. 3 brothers were here in India. And the 2 brothers were there. So she came back through, and he saw this traumatic experience of actually what we see in the movies, how the people are being cut and killed, these whole trains going up and down with dead bodies. And so that came through that. And when he came to Bombay, certain things happened in the family, and he was on the street. So there he was, from a good cultured family, suddenly on the street and sitting there. And now to survive, whatever these 2 suitcases they had of theirs. So they was like, and that's what's happening everywhere. He's saying everybody who came after this whole partition, people who were on the streets were selling things to survive, because whatever they had, they were selling. So my father said, I remember he was 8, 7, 8, 8. And he said, you have those little toys, whatever you have. So he said, I used to keep them behind, hoping that people wouldn't see them and other things would be sold and my toys would be kind of saved.
But
obviously, so at the end, all that had to go, and then and there's no money. So he was living under this bridge in Baikala called Khada Parsi ka Pul, which is, it's called Khada Parsi. Obviously, there is a statue, I think, Dadabhai Navroji or one of these Parsi heroes. And it's called Khada Parsi ka Pul because it's a standing statue and the pull it's a bridge. So you're under the bridge, and then from there life started. And then obviously they had to work, and obviously coming from a cultured, respectable family, there was no begging, never thought of that. So whatever my grandmother could do, wash dishes, and my father she told him, you should do your school. He said, but what's the use of my education if I can't help you? So, and she was very moved, and he said, we'll work, I'll work. He said, what will you do? You're coming, you don't know any work. So there were these kids beating these tin things, So he said, I'll do this. I'll learn. Okay. So he started from there, and then like selling kites, soap, मालिश वाले का वो पीछे kettle pakad ke, champi, tel wale, like a child saying it behind the guy as an assistant. And so a lot of funny stories, a lot of moving stories, and like bakeries. After they make the bread in the morning, on the floor there is the crumbs of bread. चूरा बोलते हैं हम लोग हिंदी में, उर्दू में. तो वो चूरा गिरता था. So they used to get like so much for 1 paisa, and then they'll take out the mouse shade, the cockroach shade from that, and that was breakfast sometimes because that's what they could afford. So he told us all these stories and whichever areas he came from. And then from there he moved on. And at some point, somebody was looking for children in a film called Afsana, which was V.R. Chopra Sahab's first film as a producer. And my dad was 9, 10, something, 9, I think. And he had never seen films in his life, ever. And he said, some kids were being collected, so they told my father, tu bhi aaja. So he said, but kya? So he said, like, paise kitne milenge? So it was like some, I don't know, was it 3 ana ya 3 rupaye? I don't know. So he said, of course, we'll do it. So he went on the sets, and Yash Chopra ji was the, I think, second assistant on that film. And he was coordinating the children and telling them what to do. And my father was standing there, dressed up, put a beard on his face and holding a spear. It was like a Mughal court, and all the children were acting. I think it was Jahangir's court. He told us all these stories, how Guru Dutt Saab or Bimal Roy Saab, they never treated you like a child, like, beta, aise karenge. No, they were like normal. They spoke to them like how they speak to an adult. Dekho, aisa karo, or aisa karna, or iska. So that connection, because he was also a very matured mind, even at a small age. So they actually treated him very much like an equal and spoke to him and taught him things, and especially Guru Dutt Saab. And there was this. So when he did as an actor, Dhobi Doctor, he played Kishor Kumar Saab's like the child Kishor Kumar. When he grows up, he becomes Kishor Kumar. So with Kishor Da, he had that relationship, and we suddenly see him jumping. I don't know how many years later, but Kishor Da was making a film. I think one of those Bharti Ka Naam Dadi or something. And he called my dad, and he said, "Yaar, wo ek guest appearance, special appearance karna hai." My dad said, "Okay." And he remembers a lot of things about these other actors, what they told him. And Kishor Da told him some very fantastic things, about he was also like an outcast, and Ashok Kumar Saab became big star, and Afsana was Ashok Kumar Saab also. And so my dad worked with Ashok Kumar Saab, and then Kishor Da was not known, and he was just about coming in, and he was living in a really small place where he actually said he didn't even have a toilet inside. So they used to like take a crap inside and take leaves and put it in and throw it outside in a hole. And he told my dad this, Kishor Da, that, and he said, see, one day, and somewhere he was standing and they were saying, hey, dekh Ashok Kumar ka bhai. And Kishor Da told my dad, dekhna, ek din ye bolenge, dekh isko Kishor Kumar ka bhai hai bolenge. And my dad saw that, some 30 years later or whatever. And then somewhere they were saying, and they said, he was acting Dada Muni, Ashok Kumar Saab, and he said, oh, Kishor Kumar ka bhai. So my dad just clicked, flash forward, flash back. And so he's seen wonderful times, people coming, going up and down. He's seen, and story is amazing. So, like I said, so when the acting bit, and Gurudutt Saab actually, very interesting story. So my dad was pretty popular then, and Gurudutt Saab was making his first film as a producer called Arpar. So he had a studio, an office in Famous Studio, which is pretty one of the oldest kind of tarikhi jagah, Famous Studio. And he had an office there. So he called my father. So my father was 13 or something like that. 13 and a half. So he went with a little file under his arm, and, and obviously there's no secretaries or managers. And my grandmother was a conservative kind of Muslim woman, and she was like an Indian homemaker, not used to. So she didn't travel with my father. He used to go alone. So he went, and then Gurudutt Saab said, like, we're making a film, अच्छी फिल्म है, अच्छे लोगों को साथ में काम करना है. And Shamaji was a star then. And Shamaji was a bigger star. So she was cast, and Gurudutt Saab was obviously a kind of starting off. So she was the main attraction in the film. So he told my dad, he's saying, "ठीक है." So he asked, "So what will you charge for acting in this film?" My dad said, 3,000 rupees. So he was a little taken aback. He said, "Look, it's a new production. Budget is not so much, so take 1,500. I'll give you." So my dad said, "No, no." And he was told before, "No, no, you have to be, you have to learn to bargain, and you have to, otherwise people will just run over you and take you for a ride." So he said, "No, no, 3,000 rupees." So after a lot of haggling, then Gurudutt Saab told my dad, "अच्छा चलो, हम चल रहे हैं नीचे गाड़ी में चलो, एक राउंड मारते हैं, बात करेंगे." So my dad remember he had this big black kind of a car, one of those big fancy ones, and Geeta Dutt was on one side, he was in the center, and Gurudutt Saab was on one side, and he told the driver, "Ek round maro." So from famous studio, there's a whole round, you go around Mahalakshmi Race Course, Haji Ali, and you come back again. So he took one round, and he was talking, okay, look, how cinema and what we intend to do. And my dad was sitting very adamant in the center, and and so after one round, my dad was still stuck. No, no, 3,000 rupees. So Gurudutt Saab looked and smiled, and he told the driver, "Ek aur round lo." And then he did one more round. And by the end of it, my dad said they were such lovely people, both of them. He said, and then I said, "Yeah, okay." So 1,500 is the film, and he got a lot of respect in that film. If you look at the titles, it starts with Shama, Gurudutt, Johnny Walker, Jagdeep, and Shakila. A single title. So for a child to get a single title at that time was not, very.
And the song is still famous.
That Kabhi Yaar Kabhi Paar, and strangely, sadly, Kumkumji just passed away. It was her first film. That song was picturized on her. That Kabhi Yaar Kabhi Paar. That's Kumkum Auntie. So Kumkum Auntie and my dad go back then. And my dad was elder. He was a little senior to her as an actor, because he started 4 years ago. Kumkumji, it was her first, Kumkum Auntie's first film. So, and then they became friends, and so he's there in that song. He's got a very strong role, and there's a scene in that where Gurudutt Saab slaps him, and my dad he starts crying. He's hurt emotionally, and he cried really, because my father never used glycerin even as a child, and that's another story. He never used glycerin ever. From that age, when a child didn't understand how can I cry, and this child was on demand, okay, cry, so he can cry. Oh, that was one thing very, very amazing about him. And so that is in our part, you will find the scene where he slaps him, and this whole thing where it's so natural. And now I revisited all these scenes of his, and I said, man, not because he's my father, I have not seen a child actor so natural. So natural. If you look at Do Bigha Zameen and you look at our part, especially these two films. And of course, because the directors also, there were directors who were fantastic, the writers. That acting, I feel, is one of, I think, the best as a child actor I've seen in Hindi cinema. And
I believe Sunil Dutt Saab did an interview with Jagdeep Saab. Sunil Dutt Saab was in Radio Ceylon.
Yes,
and
I think this
Jagdeep
was
Saab told him.
Yeah, no, so my dad remembers saying Metro Cinema tha. And Metro Cinema, the Balraj Saab, his real name is Balraj Saab. Balraj Dutt, Sunil Dutt Saab का असली नाम बलराज था. तो वो उस वक्त he was with radio. I think Radio Ceylon or Air India. I'm not very sure. All India Radio or Radio Ceylon. I'm not too sure. But he interviewed my father, and he was a really likable guy. My father really liked him, and something he said, I'm not recalling. And then after a few years, there was a film called Railway Platform, where Dutt Saab was the hero, and my father was playing a character, like a supporting actor in that as a child, as 14 years old, whatever, 15 maybe. And they met again. And Dutt Saab was very pleased. He said, "Arey, dekha," and in fact, Dutt Saab was, uh, and that recorded Urdu. My father was very good at Urdu. So at some point, certain dialogues, uh, Dutt Saab could actually, the director said, "Why don't you sit and work with Jagdeep?" And just some pronunciations of certain words. Which, so if you're not used to Urdu, it's pretty difficult. So, although Dutt Saab was very fond of Urdu, but the pronunciation at that point of his career. So my dad worked with him on certain lines, and he has very fond memories. And then after that, till the end, Dutt Saab and my father always, whenever they used to meet, they never met very often. Dutt Saab was busy, and then cut to from railway platform, my father became a hero, and in Barkha and Bhabhi, and Dutt Saab was also a hero, and because he had a close association with Mehboob. I must tell you this story about Mehboob Khan Saab. So Mehboob Khan Saab, my dad did a film. I think it was Aurat, if I'm not mistaken. And my father and Helen G had a small song, like a dance on the streets. So they are like earning money by singing on the streets. And Helen G was there as a child, and my father was there. So something happened, and the junior artist supplier, the people who are in charge. So there was something about payment. Then my father was supposed to be given some 6 rupees. He was giving him 3 rupees or something like that. And my father was haggling, because obviously my father was very strong, because obviously, he has to take care of himself and his mother at that age. So he was arguing loudly, saying, "No, but this is not right. You told me so much, and now you're giving me so much." And Mehboob Saab was passing by that time. And he heard this little loud banter between, so he was quite a strict kind of a person. So he said, "Hey, kya ho raha hai? Kaun chilla raha hai?" So that obviously that guy said, "Sir, ye bachcha jo hai abhi zor se chilla ke baat kar raha hai." So bola, "Oh, hamare office mein aao." So my dad was called to his office. So he had this huge room, like, probably 30 feet across. I've been to that room, my friends. Huge table, like a real proper 10-foot table with like 3 foot across. And my father walks in, very diminutive, opens the door, and in this big room with this big table and this big man who's like, obviously larger than life kind of a person. And he tells my dad, "तुमको मालूम है, हमारे यहाँ पे जो ऐसे बदतमीजी से जोर जोर से बात करते हैं, हम फिर हमारी फिल्मों में उनको ले लेते हैं." My father was, I think, 12 or 13, 12. So he was very hurt. So he had tears in his eyes, and he remembers this. He said, "Mehboob साहब, आपकी फिल्म की शुरुआत में एक शेर आता है कि मुद्दई लाख बुरा चाहे तो क्या होता है, वही होता है जो मंजूर खुदा होता है." So he's saying, अगर आप मुझे काम नहीं देंगे तो वो खुदा मुझे काम नहीं देगा. So he's saying he got up, he started trembling, he started crying. He's saying, "मेरे बाप, मेरे को माफ कर, तू क्या बोल दिया?" And he said, "तू मेरी हर फिल्म में रहेगा." And every film after that, my father, as a child, like till whatever age, he took him. And then there was a gap. And then he made Mother India. So he called my father and he said, "ये रोल है, 2 हीरो हैं, 1 हीरो का रोल तू करेगा." But my father was too thin. Birju ka role. Yeah, he said, my father was too thin. And he asked Nariman Irani Sahab, who was a cinematographer, he said, "Kuch padding laga ke kuch kare." He said, "Nahi yaar, but bare bodied hai, kai scene mein aisa jacket pehnne ka hai wo." So my father, he really felt sad. He said, "See, I had a promise, I'll make every film with you. You'll be in each of my films, but I can't fit you in here." So, so he was very like apologetic, and and my father really appreciated that at least he was so honest and so loving, and he did call it. And then of course Dutt Saab did that role, and he had gone through from the age of 10 to 20, 10 years of being on his own. So he was pretty much a self-made guy trying to do things on his own, making his own decisions. And sometimes you go wrong. It's not necessary that you take the right decision. So whatever happened, and then he lost out on that, and he did a few films. Santoshi Saab, Rajkumar Santoshi's father, P.L. Santoshi. So unke saath he had a very good relation. My father remembers him very fondly. He did a film called Roop Rupaiya, and I think Hum Panchi Ek Dal Ke was also Santoshi Saab had written. Raj Bhai, which is Rajkumar Santoshi, he took my dad in a lot of his films because of he remembered my father when he was a child. So yeah, so all these connections came up, and so AVM, that's what happened. In a lot of films went, and he got kind of frustrated then, and then it was not, so whatever happened, I don't know between, and like he must have probably been as a child. You're 20, you can get brash. You're not diplomatic enough. You don't, you sometimes must have said something, and so you tick people off maybe at that age. I don't know what happened, but it's just that the career shifted, and then he had to go, and then I think 1962. He was how old? 50, 20, 23. That's when he shifted to comedy. I think Brahmchari was the first film he shifted from a hero. In fact, he was one of the heroes. There was a film called Dada. It's a fantastic film. Dada was made as Faisla. Jugal Kishor. So my father and Jugal Kishor were the two heroes. Then there was Saredi Lutera, where Salim Saab, which is the duo of Salim Khan Saab and my father. I think what the heaven is my father, I don't remember. And so that's the stage. And then from there it went into comedy. But when he came into comedy, you see, the comedians were very well established. Mehmood Saab was well established as a comedian. Johnny Walker Saab was well established. Rajendranath Saab also was kind of coming up, because my father was a hero. And now to shift to comedy, where already there are these people who are, heavyweights so he had to find and make his own space. And that's where the timing, the comic style, which the comic style developed a little later, I think in the 70s, with Suraksha was the shifting point, because, and a lot, this whole, that whole thing was from Suraksha, because he told me he had a very bad throat and the film had to be released. And Ravikant Nagai Saab, who was the director, he said, he used to call him Jagu. My father's pet name was like Jagu. Everybody called him Jagu. So it's like, Jagu, yaar, shooting, dubbing karni hai, release karni hai film. My father said, he said, yaar, kuch bhi kar, yaar, tu kar. So my father, because his voice was that, so the dubbing became, so that whole bit was because he had a bad voice. Now that worked so well, then a lot of people started liking it. So he said, okay, maybe I can, use this as a style. And that became a kind of a style for him. From a child actor to a teenage actor to a hero to a comedian. And like I said, 50 years, he always had a release every year for 50 years. Yeah, so that, but he never got, some people would get frustrated. Like, yes, sometimes when you're alone, you tend to say, man, I've seen those days and I was a hero. I've seen these guys opening doors for me and standing up for me, and times have changed. And some people still gave him that respect, always. A lot of love. Dharamji gave my father a lot of love till the end. Dharamji's first film, which was, and Mohan Choti Saab was my father's friend, childhood friend. Dharamji's first film, I think, I'm not remembering the name, and it was the premiere, and he told Mohan Choti Saab that, why don't you call Jagdeep Saab, and for the premiere, I would like him to come. It's my first film, and I like Jagdeep Saab. My dad was already established by then. So my dad remembered going towards the interval at some point, and Dharamji was outside, and the film wasn't doing too well, and people were not liking the way the film was made, and Dharamji was kind of depressed and not very happy. And he said, I think, I don't know, I don't think it's working for me. I think I may just go back, to Punjab. And my father remembered, he said, no, you're a very good looking man. You're a handsome man. You've got a good personality. So, don't give up hope. Stick around. and he told us this. He said, and of course, then Dharamji, the way he took off, and he was, I think, one of the most handsome men in the industry, and first so-called he-man label. And so my father still remember till the end. Used to meet him sometimes, once in a while, or speak to him on the phone sometimes. So Dharamji was very, very fond of.
I was reading one of the interviews, and I believe you read one of the reviews of one of his films where the critic called his performance as loud and garish, and apparently you did not like it. Yeah. But Jagdeep Saab told you that 80% of the people are simple.
Yeah, he was very clear. He said, "Look, ये जो लोग ऊंची बिल्डिंगों में बैठ के लिखते हैं, वो हिंदुस्तान को नहीं जानते। पहली बात, हिंदुस्तान को, क्योंकि उन्होंने बोला मैंने हिंदुस्तान देखा है, मैंने हिंदुस्तान को सड़कों पे देखा है, जो असली हिंदुस्तान है, तो ये सेइंग मेरी ऑडियंस, my audience is that India, that farmer, that rickshaw driver, that small town guy. That was India then. Now it's the NRIs and the affluent and the aspirational. But then that was your audience. And in today's terminology, advertising says your target audience and your target audience. And that's what they're doing today. A lot of these times that wasn't the case. It was like, okay, do something. So you have to improvise. You can improvise only so much. So he said that India, the literacy level was very low. It was probably 70% literacy then, And it was like he said, they don't understand dialogue so much. They won't understand clever play of words. They understand simple stuff, which is more action. So that's why he said like Chaplin, Laurel Hardy, they worked much more than say a Groucho Marx or a Bob Hope, although they were brilliant. But look at the fan following of Chaplin and the Laurel Hardy as opposed to a Bob Hope and Groucho Marx were fantastic, were geniuses. But because it was verbal humor as opposed to action humor, that is a universal language. Look at Mr. Bean. It's action, totally. He's got his faces. He makes all his faces. Now, what would you call that? Mr. Bean is so current, So if you look at Mr. Bean, look at his universal appeal. He's doing making his faces, his body language. Now, all that he understood way back then, and he said, that's my audience. And if I get a scene to perform, I'll perform. If I get a director like Bimal Roy, Guru Dutt, or Mehboob Khan or K. Asif, and later if he gets a Ramesh Sippy or if he gets work with some good directors, and where they say, okay, fine, let's keep this in the real zone. Okay, I'll give you a real performance. If a child of 10 or 12 can perform so naturally, when you're 35, 40, you think he won't have become better? Obviously. But it's what's the demand. If your scene and your film demands that I act in this zone, being a natural actor, I'll show you what natural acting is. Towards the end of his career, he did, I think one of the last things he did was a series called Phulwa, which was on television. And he plays the grandfather. And he did one scene, which was such an amazing emotional scene. And everybody on the set had, like, they were literally had wet, their eyes were moist. And so that speaks for the man. It's just that you're made to do certain things. He said, like, जब लोग सर्कस में आते हैं तो ट्रपीज वाला अपना ट्रपीज करेगा, वो हीरो है, फिर वो आग के थ्रू कोई जंप मारेगा, फिर वो घोड़े लेके कोई आएगा, फिर एक सर्कस में जोकर आता है, तो जोकर से लोग बोलेंगे तो हंसाएगा। अब वो जोकर को हंसाना है, इसे मेरा काम हंसाना है। मैं अगर मुझे सीन नहीं मिल रहा है कोई, तो मैं कुछ भी करके मैं कोशिश वही करूंगा, I'll try my best, that I have to make them laugh. They are a simple people. Okay, I'll resort to maybe some actions. Maybe I'll do something where they laugh by just looking at this funny guy. So that was it. He wasn't happy with that all the time. He said, I wish there better written stuff given, then we can do that. Yeah, so that's the story about, and then I understood and I respected that. And there was a very interesting meeting he had with a director called John Frankenheimer. Now, John Frankenheimer made classics as Birdman of Alcatraz, Grand Prix, The Train. One of his last films was Ronin with Robert De Niro. He was a cult filmmaker. He made The Horseman. So he was coming on the same flight with my dad from somewhere. And my dad, somebody told him that there's a director called John Frankenheimer or something, and they didn't know him. Nobody knew him. My father was like, he was so movie. My father loved films, so and Guru Dutt Saab inculcated this. So we used to watch these kind of films. And John Frankenheimer was there, and he was coming back from shooting a film called The Horseman. And The Horseman was about this Buzkashi in Afghanistan. There's a game they play called Buzkashi. So, and he was all burnt and kind of sunburned. So my father went up to him and he just said, "Hello, sir. I'm a big fan of yours." So John Frankenheimer thought, "Okay, thank you very much." And my dad said, "I saw this film called The Train, and in that there was a shot where the train goes over the camera. So how did you shoot that?" So then he sat and said, "Oh, this guy knows, his stuff. He's seen my films closely." So he said, "Oh, please sit." So he made my dad sit, and they conversed for about an hour. A lot of things he said. He learned a lot of things from how they shoot. And then my father told him one small thing. He said, "You all really work hard. Look at you. You burnt yourself and you're shooting films. You're really." And then he told my dad one thing which got stuck in his head. He said, "It's surprising that you are saying that coming from a country like India." He said, "In your country, people who earn, say, 5 rupees will spend 2 rupees out of that 5 rupees and go and watch a film." He's saying, "I have to make it worth that 2 rupees for him, because that is like nearly 30% of his earnings. He's coming to watch that. What is your duty as a filmmaker?" My dad said that hit him so hard that, it's so true that the poor guy, he spends his money to get away, to escape from whatever reality he wants to escape from, and come and forget whatever he wants to forget, and sits there for those 2.5 hours. And what is your job? To give him the best entertainment you can give him. So he always believed in that the audience, don't underestimate the audience. Don't look down. Don't be condescending. No, they are everything. They are everything for you. And that he inculcated in us also. He's saying, never, when they come to you for talking to you, autographs, photographs, be nice. They are the ones who make you. And that's, Javed and me, both of us, we never, anybody who comes to us, they think that's a blessing of God, that somebody's liking you and they're appreciating your work. And that's where you're earning your livelihood from. So you have to respect and appreciate that they are the ones who are making who you are. So that's what he learned, this whole lesson. That was the story I wanted to tell you about.
Someone who started off at a very, very small age, started working at a very, very small age. The sort of experiences that I'm sure that he must have had must have been something else. And at the same time, I'm sure that he learned at a very early age that it's important to just be a people's person, and irrespective of their religion or economic divisions or anything of that sort. His interview with Brute became very famous recently. What do you have to say about the worldview of Jagdeep Saab?
Worldview of how he looked at the world, or how the world looked at him?
The world, he looked at the world.
See, like I said, his father died at a very early age. So who became his father figures in a way? For people like Guru Dutt Saab, Mehboob Khan Saab, Bimal Roy Saab, P. Shantaram Saab, K. Asif Saab, and so he learned a lot from them. And as we all know, they were very socialistic, very humane people, and totally dedicated to the jobs. So his attitude was, you have to give your 100% to whatever you do. Films are a responsibility in some way. Filmmaking is a responsibility to society. Art reflects life, life reflects art, yes, but what can we say through our films while entertaining. He totally believed in entertainment. He did not believe in making films for a very, very niche audience. He was very clear. He said, I have to make the masses understand in a language they would like to understand, in language they understand. So that's why you look at Guru Dutt Saab. There was layers into his films. There was, Bimal Roy Saab. It was not just, it was entertaining, great. And at the same time, there was, we take back something with you. So his worldview was, like I said, he never ever mentioned the partition. He never mentioned the trauma or the bloodshed he came through. He never mentioned religion. The people he worked with never mentioned religion. So he was, and think of it, he came back when all the Muslims were heading toward Pakistan. He comes back the other way. So his patriotism was a very different level, with people. You don't have to shout and wear some khadi and have a tricolor in your hand to say you're a patriot. It sounds khokla lagta. A lot of people do it. These are the real patriots. He said, Umar ki izzat karo, kala ki izzat karo, पैसों की इज्जत, पैसों के लिए इज्जत मत करो. मतलब पैसे की इज्जत करो, एक वो अल्लाह की नेमत है, देन है, वो एक अलग बात है. लेकिन कला, you give respect. It may be a light man or a spot boy, but he's elder to you. You give him that respect. He's elder to you. These are important elements for him. Very, very important. And he put that into us, and I've put it into my children, hopefully. So these things, like he said, do your best. Whatever your job is, this is what your job is. Give your 100%. And he was very particular. He said, like, when in his time, when he was very, very popular, and if any magazine scribe came on the set, we used to tell him, wait, either we will talk in lunch or we will talk after my shooting, because I'm on producer's time and this is his time. I cannot sit here and chat with you. I have to be focused on my work. So we'll talk. If I have a lunch break, we'll talk in that, or we'll speak after my shoot. He was very, very clear on that.
Wow.
I think, and he is giving respect to somebody else's time. He's saying, I'm on their time. They are paying me for this. I have to be focused. This is my job. So, and obviously there were no cell phones then, where everybody is with cell phones on the sets. But there was totally, I've seen Dev Saab, Nutan Ji, same thing. Dev Saab, I remember Nutan Ji on Meri Jung. She's sitting in a room. She had a book. She was not called till 4 in the evening. And somebody felt, hey, Nutan Ji bathi hai, 9 baje ki shift se aake. And she said, well, you've called me. I'm on this shift. You use me 1 hour, you use me 6 hours. I'm there at your call. You've paid me to come for this day. You've not paid me for 1 hour. Same thing with Dev Saab. If he's not shooting, he's sitting on the set, watching what's happening. All right, Javed, very nice. Come on, guys. Lashkar, I did a film with him. And so this is the attitude they had. Similar. My father grew up with these people. And so his worldview was, you give your 100%, be loyal to your land, be loyal to your work, give your 100%. Family, very important. People who love you, your audience. That was his world. That's all he knew. Like I said, he didn't have a childhood. He didn't have anything else. He didn't have hobbies. All he knew was film. He thought film, he ate film, he slept film. That's all he knew, till the end. So that's what we learned from him.
The way you have been talking about Jagdeep Saab for the last, I think, almost quite some time now, and it's amazing. You have a graphic memory. You know so much about Jagdeep Saab. I genuinely feel there can be a movie on his life. But coming to you, you started off in Meri Jung, and immediately Bol Baby Bol became a huge hit, and you had this entire dance element, which obviously Jagdeep Saab did not do. The way you have had your career.
No, but he was very musical. If you look at that one scene in Do Biga Zameen, कि कलकत्ते में आई के पालिश न कराई के चले, and that was improvising, and he was totally improvising, and then hey, hey, and the way he was moving, if you look at his other film, he was very musical, but obviously he didn't have an opportunity to.
Right,
so maybe
right. My question basically was that I think anyone who knows you would understand that you're an extremely self-respecting person, and you're a self-made person, and it is important for you to be known because of your own work and not because of the fact that you are someone's son. How did you? What was your equation with Jagdeep Saab, and the fact that you wanted to have your own identity at the same time? You had this immense respect for his body of work.
No, my father never pushed anything on us. I want you to be this, or I want you to become this. Probably because he believed in us finding our own path. That the way he did it. He believed strongly in destiny. He believed in hard work and then destiny. So he said, I'll give you an education. Now you find your way, whatever you want to do. He never underlined that you've got to do this or that. He never spoke about film like you've got to be an actor because I'm an actor. Never. But when I was young, dancing became a part of my life. Probably because I grew up in this whole Christian Catholic atmosphere, and there were a lot of these bands playing there, and so dancing was an integral part of their culture, and music, more Western music then, and so I grew up with that. And then while I was in college, then I just somehow became an entertainer. I was on stage, I was a dramatic secretary, I was doing mimicry, I was doing fashion shows, I was choreographing, I was dancing. So it just became a part of my personality. I became popular in college, then I won the All India Disco Dancing Freestyle Championship in '82, yeah, something. And then I got an offer for a film. I was still in college. I was in my final year. I was doing my BA in psychology, and I got this offer. And somebody said, some friend of mine, I think Abha, she passed away, and she was in Sea Rock. There was a hotel, very popular hotel. All the film guys used to be there. There was a club, swimming pool, so we used to go there. And she said, this Mr. Guy is looking for a newcomer for his film. He wants a very good dancer. So why don't you? I said, yeah, I don't know. I said, I'd won so she said, give me your tape, your VHS. Just give it to me. So I gave it to her. So she sent it across. And then I got a call from Mr. Guy's office. And then I went and I met him. So it was like, I just flowed wherever life took me. It was the same thing that happened with my father. And the same thing happened with my son. It's very coincidental, strange, whatever. I mean, it finds you the path. Life makes its own path for you. And I just flowed and stayed afloat. And whatever I did, I gave my 100%. So I believed in that. So when this happened, I met Mr. Ghai, and he said, this is the role. It's Amrish Puri's son, and he's a very good dancer, very charming boy, but he's a bad guy. So I told him, I said, okay, sir, can I think for it for a day? And he was slightly taken aback because, I'm Subhash Ghai, I'm the man. I'm offering you such a huge thing in my film. And then he said, okay, fine. Daddy said, baat kar lo, phir bolo. Because obviously I understood that, coming from a family, I would like to consult with my dad. So I spoke to my father. I said, bhai, ye hai. So he says, dekho, jin logon ke saath kaam kar rahe ho, they are very, very talented, proficient people. You have Jaaved Saab, who's a fantastic writer. He knew him. You have NNCP Saab, who's a very proficient producer. You have Subhash Ghai Saab, who's a very good director. Today he's making great films. You have Anil Kapoor, who also he had worked with. He said he's a very hardworking, good actor. You have Nutanji, you have Amrish Puri. So you're saying you've got a great team. You've got Lakshmikant Pyarelal ji doing music for you. You're saying, so you've got a great team. So when you're in a good team, you will come up with good work. That's all. He never said, you're coming as a villain, you're coming as a hero. He didn't think of it. sometimes I do think of it in retrospect. Maybe I should have been launched as a hero rather than different, a parallel. I could have been very easily because it was always the hero who danced in Hindi film. The villain never danced. So, but this was a break from Guy Saab tried something. He said, "Okay, I want a villain who dances, charming guy, but he's a bad guy." And like Javed Saab explained to me, so he's like a snake. How the snake moves. He moves so smoothly, but he hypnotizes you, and that's how you are. And yeah, so that was my first film, and I didn't think of it. I didn't plan my career. I didn't do nothing. I just jumped into the ocean. Said, "Okay, now let's swim." So there I was.
All right. What is the story behind the name Jagdeep? Because his actual name is Sayyid Ishtiyaq. And
Sayyid Ishtiyaq with a qaf. With a qaf, Ishtiyaq.
Ishtiyaq. So, Ishtiyaq. I can say that. Okay, and do you think there is a movie in the story of Jagdeep Saab?
Could be a documentary maybe somewhere, but yeah, I mean it's a whole life story. And I read books on the Marx Brothers. I read books on Chaplin. All of them have very similar storylines. The poverty where they come from. And Roberto Benigni said something so wonderful in his Academy acceptance speech. He said, "And I would like to thank my parents for the gift they gave me, the gift of poverty." And he said that. It was such a wonderful line, that the gift of poverty and what poverty gives you as a performer, as an actor, because you see so much, So I think my father always, poverty is one of the greatest teachers, and it gives you a lot of depth. It makes you understand. So Jagdeep, the name, like you said, his pet name was Munna at home. My grandmother called him Munna. Everybody called him Munna. Munne Saab. So Munne Saab was what he was called, Munna. And then there was a film called Munna made, and then obviously he couldn't use that name. And somebody came up with the name saying Jagdeep. So obviously my father didn't understand the Hindi aspect. So he said, Jagdeep, the pure jug ko roshan karta hai, deep, jag ka deep.
I had a lovely time listening to it. I'm pretty sure that whoever is going to be watching it, they'll be totally hooked onto it, because there are many fans of Jagdeep Saab. And
what I'm saying, one thing which was very unusual, which he developed of his own, was the rhyming. He used to take a scene and keeping the parameters of the scene, not going out of the parameter of the scene, he used to rhyme his lines, like suddenly, Are, ye to acha tha, mere paas kacha tha. So that whole thing is not, it just, he makes it up. Like the improv thing, like there's this whole Ramsey film, which is really funny, with Hungama Khan, and he's a Brahmchari. Hungama Khan is working in the house, and she's like trying to woo him, and something happens, and he gets scared, and they fall down, and he's sitting. His head is in her lap, and he's looking down up at her. And Hungama Khan was this pretty buxom lady, and he's sitting down like beneath her, and he's saying, "Arey, asman se gira khajur mein ka, ye khajur nahi to khajurao hai." So that was totally improv stuff, like Agent Vinod. Again, I remember this is improv stuff, and Sharat Saxena is there, and he's the gangster, and my dad is drunk, and he's saying, "वो मेरा जुड़वा भाई था, आपने वो फिल्म देखी है राम और श्याम?" And Sharat Saxena says, "हाँ, अभी देखते हैं, अभी देख लेते हैं." And it's like the timing, because my dad says, "आपने वो फिल्म देखी है राम और श्याम?" He says, "अभी देख लेते हैं." कहाँ लगी है? So that "कहाँ लगी" was a totally improv thing. Like अभी देख लेते हैं. हाँ, अच्छा, कहाँ लगी? So, and so many little things which he came up with throughout his career, which and there was this Sangram, Ustad. Say, oh, amazing stuff he's done as a comedian, and he brought great joy into people's lives. So I'm proud to be son. Like I said, the people said, no, I want to have my own identity. I never was adamant I want to have my own identity, but it was just that I would like to do something on my own, while accepting the fact and being proud that he's my father. I've learned a lot from him. And I would never like to disassociate myself. And a lot of people Why should you want to? And he's done amazing work. Something I should be proud of. But yes, not using, him and saying, okay, I would like to make my own way, while learning whatever I can from you, and that's what I did. And he never stopped me. He never pushed me or took me to people and said, "Mere bete ko film mein lo, hero banao." Never did that. Yeah. It came to me, and he said, "Okay, that's your life. Make it." He taught me the basic values, and those are the values that stick to you, apply it to your job. So whether I do something like a small dubbing for a Takeshi's Castle, which hardly paid you anything at that point, or you do some Disney dubbing, Mickey Mouse, or you do a Mumbai song, whether I work for 5,000 rupees or 5 lakhs or 50 lakhs, I always give my 100%, and I always do. I never, or whether I was working on theatre for 100 rupees for a show, I did something called Evita, and it's not funny with Alec Padamsee. I gave my 100%. It was never like, "Arey, iske mujhe 100 rupees mil rahe hain, uske mujhe 1 lakh rupees mil rahe hain." No. Always, you give your full 100%. So that's what I've learned.
No, that's interestingly, in spite of the fact that Jagdeep Saab has done so much of work, both as a child artist as well as a hero, but people remember him in the best possible manner because of the iconic Surma Bhopali.
Yeah.
Because that is something that everyone loves.
Yeah, and everybody thought that he's from Bhopal, and he'd never been to Bhopal ever. I mean, he went to Bhopal much, much later, even after Surma Sholay. So it was, see, like he knew Javed Saab when he was just starting off, as, and Janisar Akhtar Saab, who was our neighbor. My father was very close to Janisar Akhtar Saab, and he also wrote a song. I think his last song he wrote was for my father, a song called also. So the problem, my father said that a lot of times my father had to resort to a lot of actions and all the days, was when there's nothing written. And your audience who loves you expects you to make them laugh. And now there's nothing written. So now what do? So you try to be funny with your face, a simpler comedy, more action comedy. And but when it's written, then you see him performing. Then you don't need to do all that. So that's when if you look at certain films, then you see Surma Bhopali didn't have the louder facial expression. It was very, very natural, and so it just worked. It was brilliant to date and see. The film was an iconic cult film. So I think even Samba, became famous. He had only one line in the whole film.
Yeah,
Pure
that's
50,000.
true.
Yeah. And the first man who practiced social distancing was Samba, sitting up there. Yeah. Pure 50,000. So Surma Bhopali became, and obviously he also did a fantastic job as an actor, And small little things like, after this whole thing, that whole very thing, एक को दी मैंने पत्थर लंबू निकला भाग पकड़ के जो खींचे तान chat. So this whole donation and the scenes were written, they come from behind, and then he had the small nuances, like he says Surma bhai, ha bhai, the whole shift of tone, it was so amazing. He used to shift and it is so funny sometimes. And that Surma Bhopali, of course, and a few things improvised, so that obviously became a cult for everybody, and he was remembered most for that.
Thank you very much, and all the best wishes, and I'm sure that the legacy continues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I hope people in Toronto who are watching this, they enjoyed this, and I would just request them to say a small prayer for my father, and wish you all the best. Have a great life ahead, and I think the world, whatever it's undergoing, we all can conquer it and be more productive and learn our lessons from our mistakes, what we've made, and somewhere where we've destroyed certain things. So I think we can understand what we've destroyed and come together as humanity and a planet and make things work. So God bless all, man. Thank you very much.